There's a lot of Japan in the United States, certainly quite a bit of it here in San Francisco. Lots of Japanese products, of course, too. But one Japanese export which has not been very successful here has been the Japanese computer. Why? What have been the problems? We'll find out the answers to these questions as we take a look at Japanese computers on this edition of the Computer Chronicles.
Of all the new Japanese computer products, the most closely watched is MSX. Aimed primarily at the home market, MSX is an operating system designed by Kei Nishi to solve the problem of incompatible machines. MSX is a standard for 8-bit machines, and no matter who manufactures the computer, if it runs on MSX, it will run any software written for MSX. An admirable concept with its share of problems.
I know
that in Tokyo, MSX machines are being sold at discount prices. In this case, it's not because the product is popular. It's just that MSX has not been very successful.
Hi guys, welcome back to another video. I hope you're all well. I must apologize for my lack of appearance in videos, but the sun's been out, the World Cup's been on, and well, I've been working. But enough about me. So, a couple of weeks ago, I bought my first MSX computer. Now, I do remember these back in the olden days when they first started to appear in the UK. In fact, a friend of mine at college had one, much to our general amusement, simply because we didn't know anything about the MSX. We didn't know if they were any good or not. All we knew for sure is that they were expensive, didn't sell that well, and most games were not available, or so we thought. But as the years have gone by, the MSX there's always been a bit of interest there, and I wanted to know a little bit more about them. But, you know, not enough, obviously. It's taken me 30 years to get around to it. But here we have the SONY HIT-BIT, catchy name, MSX1 home computer. Now, this machine sticks to the premise of the MSX standard pretty well. It is as bog standard can be in the MSX range, apart from the fact it has 64K. Some of the early machines had 16, I think one may have had 32K, but this one has 64K. It has a very nice keyboard, arrow keys there which don't work that well, they're a little bit sticky, but power button, we have a nice reset. We have a BS button which you can press to erase all the BS in your life. It is a very nice keyboard, very clicky, does the job. Excuse me, we have various ports at the back. Not sure if you can see them very well, but I'll describe them as I read them in just a moment. As you can see, we also have a cartridge port on top, and the trapdoor seems a little bit lazy. It should close, but it doesn't. But anyway, the ports on the back, we have a cartridge port there, which is cartridge port 1, as far as I'm aware. Cartridge port 2 on the back, which is screwed closed. We have a very small printer port. We have RF out. We have video out. Sorry, we have video audio out. Tape out and RGB out, and a built-in power pack. So this machine, out of the box, all you need for it really is a cassette cable, some electricity, and a TV. You're pretty much ready to go. Now, of course, not many people have a cassette player anymore, but I'm sure as retro geeks, or nerds, as the case may be, we'll have a cassette player. But if you're one of those funny people, you know, the modernists who don't have a cassette player, you could always use, I nearly fell off the table, you could always also use a Tapolino. This is from eBay. It is 8-bit Tronics to 2017, version 1.4. Now, I did build one of these years ago for my C64, and I used the cassette lead for the 64, but this one's a little bit different. It's an Arduino based bit of kit with an SD card, audio out, power, and a few buttons. And all it does is play tap files. Now whether they be CAS, as they are for this thing, or tap for the ZX Spectrum, or whatever the Acorn Electron uses, or the BBC, I'm not sure. I've never loaded a cassette into a BBC or an Electron, but I'll have a go. But that's a video for another day. So this is the MSX. Like I say, I never had one back in the day. I never knew anything about them really, apart from they're expensive, not very popular, and the games were somewhat limited. I do remember having chats with my friend whose name I've forgotten, so I do apologise. Fisher, something Fisher. Anyway, I digress. It was a long time ago. But these things, they weren't that popular in the UK. But they were very popular, I'm led to believe, in some parts of Europe, in the Far East, Japan, that sort of thing. In fact, I think they were extremely popular in Japan because they sold the MSX1, the MSX2, and the MSX3 kind of, but the market had given up by then. It was a Microsoft standard, introduced in 1983 by none other than Bill Gates. And the president of the ASCII Corporation in Japan. They got together and decided to make a standard for home computing, and they did, and that was the MSX, which, does it say MSX? No, oh it does, MSX, there. Which some say means Microsoft Software Exchangeability. I'm not sure I believe that, but anyway. That's what it's supposed to do. And the idea is you can buy any MSX computer from any manufacturer and the software will work. Now it doesn't quite work as well as that. There were some issues. Some companies had more video RAM than others. Some companies had more RAM than others. But the sound chip, the video chip, and supposedly the RAM locations or the address locations were supposed to be the same, but they weren't. Now, this led to incompatibilities and a few issues along the way. As RAM became more important in the later years and we had the MSX2 standard, they got around that problem. But the MSX1 does suffer from a little bit of software incompatibility, which is strange as it is the machine with the most software for it. Now, the machine does have a lot of software that we all know, Commando, Manic Miner, all that sort of stuff, but some of the better stuff, the more impressive stuff like the Metal Gear Solid stuff, requires an MSX2. This is an MSX1. I don't have an MSX2. I would like one, but I don't have one. The MSX2 machines, from what I can gather, are 360K or 720K disk drive machines. This isn't, it's cassette based, although you can get a disk drive for them if you wish. I'm not sure how advantageous that would be, but apparently you can get a disk drive. Now, the machines, like I say, or the standard anyway, was developed and sanctioned in 1983. By 1985 they'd moved on to the MSX2, and then there was a bit of a crossover to the MSX3, which became known as, I think, the Turbo R. Now, the Turbo R was never released outside of Japan. The MSX2 had a pretty wide release, but the MSX1 had a pretty large release and sold. It was sold worldwide. Now, these machines, they're not rare by any stretch of the imagination in the UK. There are plenty of them for sale. You can buy one for 30, 40, 50 pounds. If you want an MSX2, you're looking at £100 plus, and a Turbo R would have to be imported from Japan, which would be 110 volts, I think. But anyway, so there we go. That is the MSX. Now I'm going to do a video stream shortly, playing a few games, loading from cassette, well, loading from tap, or CAS in this instance, C-A-S. So we'll play a few games. The loading mechanism is a little bit quirky. Now I'm used to the ZX Spectrum and the Commodore 64, which is load, quote, quote, on a Spectrum, or actually it's J-load, but anyway. The C64 is run stop, shift run stop, Now this is a little bit strange in so much as you have to specify which file type you're going to load. Is it machine code? Is it a basic code? Is it whatever? It's a little bit like some other machine I was using which used a similar system. It might be the Dragon 32, I'm not sure, if my memory fails me. I think it was actually, it was a Dragon 32. But anyway, that's enough. This is the MSX. I like it. It's Sony, this one. It's the HIT-BIT. It's the HIT-BIT HB75B. I'm reading that upside down, of course. It's a good machine. I do like it. It's very well made. Power pack's inside. It's very neat. It's all screwed together, so I've not pulled it apart, although I need to because the cursor keys don't work very well, but we'll be having a look at that later. But for now, we're going to go play a few games and see how they compare to the ZX Spectrum. It did get a lot of ZX Spectrum ports, which generally speaking are not very good. It did get some Commodore 64 type games, but it excelled really when it had its own software, as most machines did, of course. As soon as you started porting, then you got into all kinds of problems. But the MSX is quite a powerful machine. It's got nice sound, it's got nice graphics, although it does suffer from colour clash like the ZX Spectrum. The MSX2 introduced more screen modes, more colours, more RAM. I think it had an MPU as well, which added to the cost. But well, that's another story. So we're going to look at some games on the MSX. I'll see you in the stream shortly, I hope. Take care for now.